Welcome to Minnesota WIC Required Training 2024. Today we will talk about what WIC is, some program requirements, and general information. WIC is a public health nutrition program that provides nutrition counseling. WIC also provides benefit cards loaded with nutritious foods to help families use the information received at their WIC appointments to make healthy choices for their families. Studies show that WIC helps decrease Medicaid costs by ensuring that families have access to healthy foods that can help ward off diseases associated with less healthy eating. WIC participants include pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum people, and children from birth to 5 years of age. Each state serves their own WIC population. Only residents in Minnesota can participate in the Minnesota WIC program. Each family who participates must meet income guidelines. Those guidelines mean that about half of all babies in Minnesota and the nation qualify for WIC services. WIC participants receive nutrition education at WIC appointments, along with referrals to other health and social services as needed. Breastfeeding people also receive guidance and support as needed throughout the time they choose to breastfeed. Once participants are found eligible for the WIC program and receive nutrition education, they can use the education they receive to shop in your stores for healthy foods with their WIC cards. Foods are allowed on the WIC program based on meeting healthy requirements put in place by the federal government. Not all foods are WIC allowed. You can use the Minnesota WIC shopping guide or the My Minnesota WIC app, which we'll talk about later, to help you decide what foods are WIC allowed if you aren't sure. Now let's go through some of the categories of foods WIC does allow. WIC allows fresh, frozen, and canned fruits and vegetables, whole grains, dairy foods, breakfast cereals, juice, protein foods, infant fruits and vegetables, infant cereal, and infant formula. The foods that WIC allows are based on research that shows which foods are most lacking in family meals and snacks. Each food group has to meet certain nutrition and package size requirements to be allowed by WIC. For example, protein foods only include certain sizes of peanut butter, canned or dry beans or peas and eggs, not meats or other protein foods, with the exception of tuna, which is allowed for exclusively breastfeeding moms. Only certain whole grains are allowed, such as bread, tortillas, pasta, brown rice, and oats. Because WIC only authorizes certain package sizes, there may only be a few foods in each category that are WIC allowed. For example, cheese is only allowed in 8 or 16-ounce package sizes, so all other sizes of cheese are not eligible to be WIC allowed. The reason for this is that WIC is a supplemental program, so what WIC provides is not meant to meet the nutritional needs for the family for the entire month, and only certain package sizes are allowed. These sizes are determined at the federal level, and states must work within those sizes when allowing foods for WIC. Most WIC customers receive 1% or skim milk only on their WIC cards. Some stores have substituted whole or 2% milk to customers who have 1% or skim milk on their cards, and this is a violation of the WIC agreement. It is considered fraud. Your store may be audited or investigated if it is suspected that you are selling whole or 2% milk to customers with lower fat milk on their cards. The reason WIC offers certain milk types to certain customers is because of saturated fat. Some participants, such as children aged 1 to 2 years old, need the extra fat for brain development. Those over 2 years old typically do not need extra fat, and the kind of fat in milk is saturated fat, which can more easily cause issues like heart disease. By only allowing the milk listed on the WIC card, you're helping make sure that children in your community are growing up strong. Because only certain foods are WIC allowed, it can sometimes be challenging for a family to choose the right foods in your store. WIC has developed tools for both families and stores to better be able to determine which foods are WIC allowed. Those include the Minnesota WIC Shopping Guide, the My Minnesota WIC app, which we will talk about later, and the shelf labels that can be placed on the shelves in your store to direct customers to WIC allowed options. If you would like additional materials for your store, you can find the order form on our website. Being kind to families who accidentally choose the wrong foods and helping them choose correct foods when time allows is always appreciated. Let's take a few minutes to determine which of these foods is WIC allowed and which are not. Herbs, garlic, and ginger, an 8.9-ounce box of plain Cheerios, a 20-ounce loaf of Leaven Fresh 100% whole wheat bread, milk in half gallons, 12-ounce package of plain mozzarella cheese sticks, a 2-pack of 2-ounce plain Gerber infant fruits or vegetables, 16 to 18-ounce container of Just Natural, and a 64-ounce container of Juicy Juice grape juice. So if you have your guesses in place, we'll go ahead and review the ones and see what is and is not WIC allowed. Herbs, garlic, and ginger are not allowed because typically not enough of that item is eaten at one time to make up a serving of fresh vegetables. 8.9-ounce box of plain Cheerios is not allowed because for cold breakfast cereals, the smallest size package is 12 ounces. So for those cereals, 12 ounces or larger is the only thing that's allowed. 20-ounce loaf of Leaven Fresh bread is not allowed. Leaven Fresh is not a brand that is WIC allowed, and all of our whole grains, for which bread is one of them, must be 16-ounce or 1-pound package size. Milk in half gallons is allowed. A 12-ounce package of plain mozzarella cheese sticks or queso fresco, that is not allowed. It has to be an 8 or 16-ounce package size. So that's why the 12-ounce package size is not allowed. A 2-pack of 2-ounce plain Gerber infant fruits or vegetables is not allowed. Even though the 2-pack of 2-ounce does equal 4 ounces, and that's what is the WIC allowed size, the container itself must be 4 ounces, so 2-ounce containers are not allowed. A 16 to 18-ounce container of Jif Natural is not allowed. Neither is Skippy Natural. The reason is because added ingredients are put into those that make them no longer meet the definition of peanut butter, which means they're a spread, and those are not allowed on the WIC program. Other natural peanut butters are allowed, so someone can choose from a different natural peanut butter that is WIC allowed if that's what they would like. A 64-ounce container of Juicy Juice grape juice is not allowed. The grape juice is actually a blend of grape and apple juice. And with WIC, you can only have allowed juices that are single type or single flavored juices. So that's why Juicy Juice grape is not allowed. It's because it's a blend of juices. Some program requirements are mandatory to participate as an authorized WIC vendor, so let's talk about some of those requirements. Monitoring visits can happen anytime during your store's business hours. WIC staff will visit your store unannounced to check minimum stock and pricing, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. If you fail a monitoring visit, you get a second chance, but if you fail another monitoring visit anytime in a 6-month period after the first failed visit, your store can be terminated from WIC, which means you would no longer be able to accept WIC at your store. The best way to pass a WIC monitoring visit is to make sure you have WIC minimum stock on your shelves at all times and that all WIC foods are priced. Every store must meet minimum stock requirements at all times in order to be authorized and to maintain authorization as a WIC vendor. There are 2 tiers of requirements, and those are based on how many people live within certain counties. The metro area has higher stocking requirements than greater Minnesota stores, and you can find the minimum stocking requirements on our website. These requirements are checked on monitoring visits, and unannounced monitoring visits can happen at your store at any time. If you receive violations on these monitoring visits, your store may face penalties based on the violations you receive. It's important to keep minimum stock requirements in place at all times, not only because it allows you to offer enough variety of foods for your WIC customers, but also because your business may lose its WIC authorization if you have too many violations on monitoring visits. We'll talk more about violations later, but violations and their penalties can be found in the agreement you signed when you were authorized to be a WIC vendor. All WIC foods must be priced either on the shelf or on the individual food item, and these are checked on unannounced monitoring visits to your store as well. WIC does not post maximum prices, and the guidance is to charge WIC customers the same you would charge a customer paying with another payment type. These prices are updated and downloaded into register systems when they change. The WIC program monitors prices continuously to make sure that prices are updated according to market price fluctuations. We have access to data and can see the prices WIC vendors are charging customers for WIC foods. That data is used to determine the maximum prices for WIC. Not posting product prices and charging higher prices for WIC customers than customers paying with a different payment type is a violation of your WIC agreement and may result in you losing your WIC authorization, which means you would no longer be able to accept WIC at your store. Because infant formula is the only food babies consume for their nutrition, it is extremely important to purchase formula only from authorized wholesalers. Unauthorized wholesalers may have stored infant formula in unsafe conditions or tampered with the cans. If an infant becomes sick because of unauthorized infant formula you purchased for your store, you may be held liable. You can find a list of the authorized wholesalers on the WIC website. All cashiers or those accepting WIC cards for transactions at your store must know how to perform a balance inquiry, purchase, and void. Each WIC food must be scanned individually. You cannot scan one food's UPC and provide another food. When inputting prices for fresh produce, you must input the price for each type of fruit or vegetable. For example, add up the price for bananas and input the price for the total for bananas. Add up the price for potatoes and input the price for the total for potatoes. Do not add up all the produce and input the price for the entire produce total. If you need help with general WIC training or other questions related to WIC transactions, you may contact the health.wicvendor@state.mn.us email address. There's a demonstration video on our website of how to complete all the WIC transaction types. You may use this for training staff who work at your store or to refresh your memory if it's been a while since you completed a WIC transaction. Some stores are at a higher risk for getting violations during an investigation or audit. We will talk about some ways you can reduce your risk in the next few slides, but you may also watch a 10-minute video on the WIC website about how to best comply with WIC rules. Integrated register systems include WIC in the total transaction, so you do not have to use a separate terminal to process WIC. It can make errors less likely because it's a part of your register system and prices do not have to be hand entered. The cost to install an integrated system may be more upfront, but monthly costs may be lower, which means that you'll save money in the long run. There are lower cost options that might make sense for your business. Remember that not every register system is certified to accept WIC cards, even if a company is telling you that it is. Make sure to check our website for certified systems that accept WIC payments, or let us know that that's what your plan is. You can email us at health.wicvendor@state.mn.us if you're not sure. Certified eWIC integrated systems are listed on this slide and can be also found on our website. Lower cost options include FTS Solutions, Novodia, and National Retail Solutions. If you're considering integrating your system, please reach out to us before you do. Violating the terms of your vendor agreement can have serious consequences now that we no longer use paper vouchers for WIC benefits and instead use a WIC card for transactions. All data associated with WIC sales is electronic and viewable by the Minnesota WIC program, which means we can see all the foods you sell for WIC and all the prices you charge for each food. That data is used to determine which stores are at a higher risk of violations of their WIC agreements and may be investigated or audited by the WIC program. If you've violated your WIC agreement, you may receive a sanction, which can include a monetary penalty or disqualification of your authorization, which means you can no longer accept WIC cards at your store. Some examples of violations include overcharging, which is charging a WIC customer more than you charge a customer paying with a different payment type, substituting non-WIC foods, which means scanning one thing but providing something different than the product scanned, and failing to have minimum stock. If you cannot locate your vendor agreement, one is available for view on our website. You must keep all invoices and receipts for purchases of WIC foods for 3 years. This means that whenever you order a food for WIC through your supplier, you must keep the invoice that lists the food and the quantity. If you shop at a larger store to help stock WIC foods, you must keep the receipts from the larger store to prove that you bought the foods for WIC sale in your store. Receipts from larger stores may degrade over time, so it's a good practice to photocopy them or keep photos of them in a folder on your computer. If you're audited, you must provide the receipts and invoices for WIC foods if requested. These will prove that you bought the foods that you say you have sold for WIC. Without the invoices or receipts, you would not be able to prove you sold the foods you say you sold for WIC because you cannot prove that you purchased them. When these invoices and receipts are requested, they must be in order by date. You will be asked to put them in date order if they are not, which can be a time-consuming task. If there's an error in the amount you were paid for a WIC transaction, you can contact the health.wic vendor at state.mn.us email, and someone can assist you. You may never ask a WIC customer to pay the difference if you charge a higher price than the maximum price for WIC. You may never contact a WIC customer for any reason. If you need to give a message to a WIC customer, you can contact us at the email address on this slide, and we can contact the customer on your behalf. If you are regularly exceeding WIC NTEs, which is not to exceed maximum prices, please contact us for consideration on raising the maximum price. If we see that other stores that are the same size and located within the same type of area, urban or rural, are also exceeding these maximums, we can raise the maximum price on that food. Reporting your NTEs is not a guarantee that the prices will be raised. Data from all stores that are the same size and type are taken into consideration when maximum prices are raised. If you're frequently and consistently charging prices over the not to exceed amount, your store may be investigated and taken off the WIC program. If you do not have a WIC food in stock, you may never charge a WIC card and have the customer return for the item later. Instead, the customer will need to return to your store for the item when it is in stock, and the WIC card must be used to purchase the item at that time. You may never hold a WIC card at your store. WIC customers must be present for all WIC purchases with their cards. Incentives or offering a free item or service specifically for WIC customers to shop in your store is not allowed. For example, you may not offer a free soft drink to attract WIC shoppers to your store. If you offer a free soft drink to everyone who shops at your store, then you must also offer it to WIC customers, but you can't offer something to only WIC customers for shopping in your store. You must notify WIC of a change of ownership before it happens. You will need to fill out an application for a change of ownership, but the process will be faster than if you were opening a brand new store. Please let us know a month in advance if possible so that we have time to fully process the application so that no break in accepting WIC cards happens for your store. And for a sale to be considered a change of ownership, the new owner or person who oversees WIC and handles WIC transactions at the store must have been with the store for at least 3 months and must understand the rules of the program and how to do WIC transactions. If that's not the case, the new owner will need to apply as if the store was a brand new store. Changes of ownership are considered any owner being added who will own 20% or more of the store. Any owner who leaves the ownership of the store needs to be reported to WIC, but an application does not need to be filled out. For example, if John and Ahmed own a store each at 50% and John leaves the ownership, but Ahmed remains and now owns 100%, that needs to be reported, but the store does not need to apply as a change of ownership or submit an application. It's only if someone new comes into the ownership of the store at 20% or more when a change of ownership application must be submitted. If you fail to notify us of an ownership change, your WIC agreement will be terminated, which means you can no longer accept WIC at your store, and you would need to wait a year before you can reapply. Let's look at some miscellaneous information about WIC now. The approved product list, or APL, is the list of all foods that are WIC allowed. This list of foods is downloaded into stand-beside terminals regularly to update the system with the most current WIC allowed foods and should happen automatically. If a terminal isn't up to date with the APL, you may get an error. When this happens, it isn't WIC's fault. Contact FIS to make sure the APL is up to date in the register system. Balance inquiries are a useful tool to help determine if a food is on a WIC card and available for purchase. If you need help running a balance inquiry, contact FIS or watch the stand-beside terminal transaction video on the WIC website. If your APL is not up to date, you may get a message on the terminal that says not WIC approved, invalid WIC item. If the food you are trying to ring up is on the WIC card but isn't scanning correctly on your terminal. This message appears when a non-WIC allowed food brought to the register also, so make sure that the food is WIC allowed and on the WIC card. If this happens, it likely means that your APL is not up to date. You can check to see when your APL was last updated and manually update your terminal by following the instructions on the WIC website. If you run this update and you get an error, you should call FIS. You must know your location or terminal ID when you call. To find your location or terminal ID, look at the side of your terminal. The ID should be on a sticker on the side of your terminal. The ID is a letter followed by 6 numbers. Make sure not to enter the last 3 numbers in the series because those numbers are not part of your terminal ID. You must know this number to get help from the FIS Help Desk. The number for the FIS Help Desk is 833-566-5249. The My Minnesota WIC app is available for download on mobile devices. WIC customers can view the foods on their card, find stores that accept WIC, scan UPCs of foods in the Food Finder to find out if they are WIC allowed, and check out shopping tips to help with WIC shopping. The WIC customer must register their WIC card with the app to see the foods on their specific card. Stores can also download the app to their phones to see if a food is WIC allowed. Remember, unless a WIC card is registered with the app will only show if a food is generally allowed, not if it is allowed for a specific customer. The only thing that should not be scanned is fresh produce. These are not in the WIC app since Minnesota WIC does not generally add fresh produce to the app. Remember that even if you figure out that a food is allowed for a customer but will not scan on your stand-beside terminal, you cannot provide it to the customer by scanning something else. WIC uses email in almost all cases to communicate important information, such as information about food recalls, to send out WIC newsletters, report transaction issues, communicate about violations or a problem, or to simply ask you a question. Please make sure that you check your spam folders regularly so you don't miss any important communications from the state WIC office. You may update your email by filling out a form on our website or sending an email to the email address on the slide. And that's the end of our presentation. So thank you for attending today and watching our presentation. It's great that you're our partner, and we thank you.